And this is Local Talk. I'm your host for the hour, Ursula Rudenberg, and that was Alicia Keys with Lift Every Voice and Sing, otherwise known as the Black National Anthem. February is Black History Month, and we will be bringing you programming to honor and explore that throughout the month. However, February also has another significance for an important local institution. Access, the Assault Care Center extending shelter and support, was founded in February 45 years ago. Access is celebrating its 45th anniversary with a project they call Accessing Our History, a concerted effort to document the history of the organization. They are tracing the historic the stepping stones and the historic landmarks that built Access and the people that built it into the service that it is today. So what better way to commemorate this anniversary than to kick off February with Tess Cody, the Executive Director of Access, and Courtney Palmersheim, Development Coordinator and Producer for Accessing Our History project. Welcome, Tess and Courtney. It's good to have you with us.
Good morning.
In unison. Okay. Before we get started, I'd like to advise you, the listener, that our conversation will involve sexual assault and domestic violence, and these topics can trigger emotional responses. Before we get into the Accessing Our History project, Tess and Courtney, could you please describe exactly what Access is for anybody who's not familiar with Access, and tell us what you do?
So Access Assault Care Center, we provide support services to survivors of sexual abuse, domestic abuse, and homicide and other violent crimes. At our heart, we're an anti-violence organization, and so that looks like accompanying people as they make reports to different systems. Could be a school, law enforcement, helping people figure out how they can keep themselves safe, keep their families safe. That might be through emergency shelter or just a really solid safety plan and troubleshooting. Our job is to hear out survivors and help them meet the goals and things that they need to recover from trauma and make their life what they want it to be.
And tell us exactly why this is a historic moment. Give us a little bit of sense of why this project that you're doing right now came about, Accessing Our History project.
Yeah. Well, I have to just take one quick moment to acknowledge it's interesting to be asked, why is this historic, when I'm sitting here with our founder. Ursula helped found this agency 45 years ago, and that's not lost on me that there's something beautiful and amazing about getting to look back at our history with you specifically. And I think just the thoughtfulness and understanding that this project has had because we've gotten to do that with you has been amazing. So there's that first bit of recognition. I would also...
Full circle moment, right? Full circle moment.
It is a full circle moment. And I mean, it's also historic because I think that just recognizing that throughout our history, across all the decades we've existed, survivors have built this agency. And there's something really amazing and powerful as you start to realize, have that kind of come into light, how the agency developed over time, and that the decisions we're making today about how we serve survivors are informed by the lessons we learned over time, even if they weren't explicitly named. And then the other thing that I know, at least for me, has been really powerful with this project has been just recognizing that we're in a complex national moment where, in recent years, survivors have been so vocal, willing to be brave and share stories through the Me Too movement. And at the same time, as a country, we haven't always been able to fully hear them out and know what to do when they speak up. And I think there's something really powerful of pausing and saying, these are stories about hearing survivors out and the real impact that can have. So those are the first things that came to my mind. There's 1,000, we could spend a whole bunch of time just on why is it historic that a sexual assault agency is turning 45 and the kind of unifying power that has. But those are just a couple of the top line things that come to my mind.
Well, the good news is that nobody is really asking anymore, why the heck do we have this in the first place, right? I mean, why do we have a center like that? And I think that's one of the things that
Yeah.
came out when we were exploring the history, is that transition from asking why is this even necessary to, to accepting the reality of sexual violence and abuse.
It's easy to forget that movement change has happened in 45 years, especially when you're in the day-to-day of seeing that hurt still happens, but change has happened.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Well, actually, KHOI partnered with Access for this project, Accessing Our History. One part of the project, which is the oral history part. We we recorded a lot of oral histories here in the studios at the radio station. But Courtney, tell us a little bit about the project. Just what are what are the goals of the project, and what are you actually doing?
Yeah. So at its core, Accessing Our History is a storytelling project, like you've said. In 1976, Access was founded, but in the 45 years that we've been serving survivors, we've changed quite a bit, from expanding our reach to 4 additional counties, into adding services like a 24/7 helpline and a shelter for victims and their families to come stay at. Accessing Our History just really aims to highlight all of those changes and the stories of past staff and volunteers and interns, in hopes of recording and documenting our history to live on forever, but also just to celebrate all those that helped us get to where we are today. And KHOI, like Tess said, has been so amazing in helping us record the stories that we'll be sharing and reflecting on this year. So today we're kicking off Accessing Our History with a 45-day social media campaign over on our Facebook. It's at Assault Care Center. We're going to be sharing just short snippets of our history and testimonials. And we're so excited to be sharing the story of Access with everybody.
Yeah, and what Courtney said about the reach of Access now is really significant. Access started as one telephone in my apartment here on Douglas Avenue, actually 1 block away from where KHOI is now. And it literally was just that. And today it's an agency that reaches many counties. And this is this is testimony to the work that many, many people have done. This has not been an easy organization to build. The topic is not a pleasant one. And many, many people have applied themselves to this. And we heard some of these people in the studio talk about their journey that became the journey of Access, too. And it really gave me a lot of respect for the many phases that the organization has gone through to be what it is today. Before we're going to hear a few of these clips and have you talk about them. But before you do that, Courtney, you are developing a page on the Access website as well for this project. Tell folks how they can find it.
Yeah, so our website is assaultcarecenter.org. And we just wanted to make sure that everything Accessing Our History had a place to live publicly, so that anyone can read and listen to the amazing stories that we've been collecting. So if you visit our website, assaultcarecenter.org, and hit donate in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the tab Accessing Our History. And on there lives all the stories we've been collecting, upcoming events correlating to Accessing Our History, and just other ways to be involved with our project.
Okay. So like I said, and also like Tess and Courtney explained, this is an oral history project as well as a written project. And we did take hear a lot of people's stories here in the studio and recorded them. One of the types of people that we heard, all sorts of people, anywhere from founders to pre-founders to peripheral helpers to administrators and managers to advocates. And so one of the types of people that did do a lot of the work at Access and still do are the advocates. So can you explain what an advocate means at Access? What is an advocate?
Yeah, an advocate is a person who comes alongside a survivor and supports them as they kind of move through and navigate whatever it is they want to. And that sounds kind of like mushy language, but that's intentionally mushy. As an agency and as an approach, we're really survivor driven. And so what what a survivor kind of wants to do, after their experience of trauma, our goal is to help them figure out what that is, because there's something healing about that decision-making process and that choice opportunity, right? And so an advocate's job there is really kind of to be, in some ways, professional friend is what comes to my mind, but they're a systems navigator. They're a wearer of many hats. They're a professional listener, a support system, a champion. And they make sure that they open the doors for survivors that need to be opened, is kind of what their main focus is.
Yeah, and the survivor has a number of decisions they have to make relatively quickly. When something happens, they have to decide whether they're willing to go to the hospital. They have to decide whether they'll report to the police, whether they will prosecute eventually, whether they'll tell their family. There's a lot of decisions that they need somebody to guide them through, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's who hasn't had in their own life, had a situation where they had to make really hard decisions. Sometimes you need somebody to hear you out. You need somebody who maybe has a little bit more information, more context about how something works, that they can give you that information in a timely fashion.
Right.
Or somebody who just kind of knows the landscape and can help you navigate it. Those are all super helpful things. And that's what our job is all about.
Yeah, and it's to the credit of the Ames Police Department that historically, way back before really rape was accepted as a legitimate crime, so to speak, the Ames Police Department, when I started the Rape Crisis Center, every time they would get a call that involved sexual assault, they would immediately call me and ask me to come to the police station and involve me as the advocate. And that was really a lot of the foundation upon which all of this started, was the willingness of the Ames Police to bring in somebody and the recognition that somebody else was needed besides a police officer. So we've heard over and over again while we were listening to the stories of advocates, the work that they did there was life-changing for them, and that it was a very deep learning experience for them. So I was wondering if we talked about bringing some of these voices here to the air, and I think Tess and Courtney have some clips that they want to share with you. And one of the voices we recorded was an advocate named Adam, and we have a clip to share with what he said. Courtney and Tess, can you set up this clip? Who was Adam, and what was he explaining in this clip?
So Adam Stark worked with Access from the years 2000 to 2005 as both a shelter intern and a full-time shelter coordinator. So in this clip that we're about to play, Adam talks about learning what it means to be an advocate for survivors of violence.
Okay.
That advocating for her and her getting into housing, that was just going to be it. I was going to say the right thing and everything was going to be okay. And it's 20 years later, she's in a really, really bad place. And so it makes me think back to that taking on is that advocacy is bigger than one person and one person's ability. And that the essential piece of understanding what people see as success in their life is so vitally important for the client, but also for yourself, because it actually takes pressure off of you, because it isn't yours to solve. That takes years to learn. And it helps you in all aspects of your life, how you interact with your family and your friends, and how it impacts your own mental health by being able to do that.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about what Adam was describing?
Yeah, so Adam's just describing that over his time with being an advocate at Access, he just learned that he needs to separate himself, I guess, and let the survivor, let the victim really see for themselves what success is and see what they need, and to make sure he doesn't get his own views and his own versions of success caught up in that, and really learning how to do that.
Okay, thank you. And so Adam was one of the many people who have been advocates at Access. And like we said before, Access is celebrating 45 years this February. So it's celebrating this with Accessing Our History project in partnership with KHOI. And we're speaking with Tess Cody and Courtney Palmersheim, who are with Access. Tess is the executive director, and Courtney is the development coordinator and also the producer of the Accessing Our History project that we're kind of exploring today. We're starting to explore. We'll go into this a little bit more during the month. And Adam gave a good description of what he learned about his place as an advocate. We have another clip that you wanted to share, and this is an advocate named Nadia. Could you explain a little bit who Nadia is?
Yeah. So Nadia LaFontaine worked with Access from the years 2012 to 2015 as both a volunteer shelter advocate and a full-time sexual assault advocate and special programs coordinator. In this clip that we're about to play, Nadia explains why it was so important for her to learn how to take care of herself as an advocate.
Okay, here's Nadia.
After I worked my first volunteer shift, I was like, this is it. I figured it out. Like, this is amazing. This is what I want to continue doing. And I'm very fortunate to be able to find that out at a young age. But because I felt I was so in love with it, had so much passion, it tied very closely to me and what I felt was my purpose, I just wanted to do everything. And was continuously burning myself out and not able, even though I was told, like, be careful about burnout and you should be able to establish boundaries and don't answer your work cell when you're, not working or on call. And I ignored all of that stuff because I just cared so much. And so that was really difficult. I feel like you kind of either you burn yourself out or you get close enough to it that you recognize it and then you can bring yourself back so that you can maintain. And I kind of had to have a conversation with myself and say, I want to do this long term, and how can I sustain myself in it? And so that was difficult. I wanted to do so much, and I wanted to make so much right. And you have to recognize, like, you are just human, and that this is somebody else's life, and things are going to happen, and you can't make everything better. You can only make it, you can make it better, but you can't fix it. And that was difficult. And whether those limitations be because of systems constantly failing survivors, or the university, or even just their own, like, support system, that was difficult.
And that was Nadia. She is a advocate at Access. And I think Nadia really expressed something that we heard from quite a few people, actually, during the Oral History Project, that, when you talk about it, it's always easy to forget that this is very, very difficult work to do, being an advocate, because you're dealing with some of the most painful aspects of human nature. And I think a lot of people who talk to us, express that they had to experience a lot of failure, or, seeing the people that they were advocating for not have the outcomes that they had hoped for, right? And that it really kind of points to how very, very difficult this work is, and how many people have really been willing to engage in it is amazing. Tess and Courtney, do you have any comments about it?
I think you sum it up really well, that is a common theme we heard while talking to people, and just the importance of taking care of yourself in order to keep doing this important work.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a real short break, and then we'll be back to talk just a little bit more about this project. And this is Local Talk here on KHOI Community Radio. I'm your host for today, Ursula Rudenberg, here with Tess Cody, who is the Executive Director of Access, and Courtney Palmersheim, who is Development Coordinator. Courtney is also producer for Access's project called Accessing Our History, which is celebrating their 45th anniversary this February, starting today. And we've been playing clips from oral testimonies from people who worked as advocates at Access. And Access and KHOI have been partnering to make some of these recordings. And Nadia and Adam described some of the lessons they've learned from being advocates. Tess and Courtney, what other kind of things did you hear from people who talked about being advocates and what they learned about from working at Access?
Yeah, the stories that we've heard since starting this project are phenomenal and so inspiring. And each person that has dedicated their time and energy to Access has their own unique story to tell. And I would encourage going to check all those out on our website. But some of the other pivotal things I think we heard people say were learning the importance of survivor-centered work, the notion that survivors are people just like you and me, and they know what's best for them. Learning that as an advocate, that you're there just to tell them about their options, but support them on their journey and just empower them to make those decisions for themselves. That's something I think people talked about a lot. And another thing that people mentioned is just explaining that in the anti-violence movement, sometimes you have to fight to be heard, especially 45 years ago when Access was just opening up. You have to fight for what's needed and sometimes face criticism. And some of our storytellers just told us how important it was to learn to keep fighting for survivors and keep fighting for a service that you know is needed. And we'll be sharing more of these stories the next few weeks, so I'm really excited about that.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah.
Tess, you're the Executive Director of Access, but you yourself have been an advocate. Tell us a little bit about your journey as an advocate at the center.
It's been actually really good, affirming to listen to some of these stories, because definitely a lot of, I think, thematic aha moments in my career as well. When I think about, especially when I think about early Tess, young Tess as an advocate, I think one of the lessons I needed to learn was just that real listening is hard. And it's so easy to listen to somebody to respond, especially when you're anxious and the story you're hearing feels high stakes. It's so easy to just want to be listen so that I can respond to the thing that they're saying. But that's not necessarily what people need. What they need is somebody who really just sits with them in whatever the moment is and really hears them out before even worrying about the response part. That can come, and you will find your words when you need to have that response piece there. But that kind of authenticity that comes from real deep listening, that is a gift that we don't often give each other in this country, and it takes a lot of practice to get good at it. So that's definitely been one thing that I've learned, and I'm not sure that I'm fully perfect at it, to be fully honest. I think work in progress on there, but I think another thing that has that's been a learning process is just that dignity matters. And I have seen a lot of survivors make choices that on the outside seem like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you take this option over here? Like that kind of classic question of why doesn't he just leave, or some of those sorts of questions. When I get to the heart of those, it's because for a lot of survivors, it comes down to dignity, that wasn't what they wanted their life to be like. That's not what they wanted to be treated like. And so of course they didn't, if you center that dignity and respect for that survivor matter, then you would never choose some of the options that people might be trying to push or think are best for somebody. And I think that for me, when I realized, whatever my agenda or my hangups about what a good life could be got set aside, I was a better advocate. I was better at really seeing people. Yeah. Thank
you for sharing that. It's beautiful to hear kind of your own development. I think for me, one of the most profound lessons that I took away from being advocate, situation of sexual assault and abuse, was that that somebody even speaking up and telling me about it was a first act of power. And, power is really
Totally.
what is needed. That the survivor of an event like that is struggling to regain a sense of power, and just being able to tell somebody is a first act of power. And I don't think I respected the power of that until I became an advocate, that just talking to each other is really the beginning of healing, right? Well, thank you. We've kind of explored a little bit what an advocate is. So what before we end our conversation, is there anything kind of bigger that you feel that you've learned so far by doing this history project? What's your takeaway so far from it?
It's kind of funny that Tess, you mentioned this thing about listening, because that's what I've learned, that everybody has a story to tell, and sometimes they just need the chance to be heard. They just need to be asked. And the story has reminded me to do that and to give people the opportunity to tell their story. And I think I've also gained just a deep appreciation for the people who saw the gap in Ames 45 years ago and did something about it. And yeah, Ursula, I'm looking at you. What you guys did 45 years ago is so amazing. And I've just really learned to appreciate that.
Thank you, Courtney. Tess, any thoughts?
I think that kind of what your last statement there, just that like power in that first conversation. I think a theme for me has just been being brave, being bold on the part of survivors is always worth it. And that every time somebody in this community, whether that's you at the founding or folks at our agency who've made some kind of bold decisions at different times, have chosen that path of it's always paid out, and it's been hard, but the fight is worth it. And I think that energizes me kind of for the fights that we have today.
Yeah, I really, in hearing these testimonies, I just really heard how difficult this work has been and how many people have applied themselves just in a very, very committed way. Very, very impressive to hear what people have done. Again, if you've just joined us, we're talking about the Accessing Our History project of Access, the local, or really the regional at this point, rape crisis and domestic violence support center. And we're with Tess Cody, who's the executive director, and Courtney Palmersheim, who's the development director. Tell us again, Courtney, how somebody can find this information online. I guess both Facebook and Facebook and website, right?
Yep. First, make sure to follow our Facebook page. It's at Assault Care Center. We'll be sharing short snippets and stories over there for the next 45 days. And then, our project also lives on our website, assaultcarecenter.org. So check it out there as well.
And you'll be posting some of the testimonials there, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, yeah, and we'll link to that on our website too. Now, of course, the all-important question at the end of the day, the most important question is that if someone needs help from Access, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, if someone needs help, they can call one of our 24/7 helplines. I'll go ahead and list them now. Our sexual abuse line is 515-292-5378. Our domestic abuse and homicide violent crimes line is 515-292-0519. And our housing line is 515-292-0543. Those lines are 24/7. And we also have a live chat that operates 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday. So it's like chatting online. And that's found on our website in the upper right-hand corner.
So someone might not have had time to write down all those numbers. Can the numbers be found on your website?
Yep. They're, I think, right at the bottom of the of our website.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you run by those numbers again real quickly?
Yep. Sexual abuse, 515-292-5378. Domestic abuse and homicide violent crimes, 515-292-0519. And housing, 515-292-0543.
And this is a confidential service, right?
Free and confidential, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and finally, if somebody wants to donate to Access, where do they go?
Yeah, so you can donate to the Accessing Our History campaign by visiting our website again, assaultcarecenter.org, clicking donate in the upper right-hand corner, and clicking the Accessing Our History silver donate button. And you can also mail checks to P.O. Box 1429, Ames, Iowa 50014.
Okay, thank you for coming, both of you, Tess Cody and Courtney Parmesan. It's been a pleasure to partner with Access to celebrate this 45th anniversary, and we're going to continue this story here on Local Talk for the next 2 Mondays, so stay tuned on Mondays. It's a great and proud local success story to enjoy, and you'll be sharing some more clips and some more aspects of what has come out in this oral history project. So thank you for joining us this morning, and we'll see you again next Monday.